one time, we're uncaged.
Welcome to Topple Uncaged. I'm Steve Topple and you're locked on to the UK's hottest politics and music podcast. Each week I bring you the rawest takes on the big stories making the news, always joined by a very special guest. Then I pleasure your mind, body and soul with the freshest, most banging international music going.
Uncaged.
D-Buzz.
Aish.
Hard to death.
Treesha, boy, from Nairobi to Kingston.
You call them.
This party couldn't get no better. Chase for the clouds and we bring you good weather.
I have a bit of the old and a bit of the new on today's edition of the Topple Uncaged podcast, and I don't mean in terms of age. I mean that one of my guests is an old friend of this show who I'm delighted to be welcoming back, and the new is a new guest to this show who I think is a stunning artist, and I'm really excited to have her on here. I'm equally excited to have them both on actually, because they have recorded two fantastic tracks, both very different but both over the same rhythm, and I heard this and I was just like, I have to get both of these people on because it is stunning. It is on point musically with what's going on at the minute, and both tracks also have very important points they make within the lyrics. It's really exciting to have them on. I think they're fantastic. Like I say, old friend of the show, dancehall legend who broke out last year into fantastic conscious and spiritual territory with his stunning project, is what I have to call it, Holy Temple. Mr. Bay-C is here.
Yeah, give thanks for having me, bro.
And also, again, new to the podcast, this artist is absolutely stunning in her own right. Hailing from Kenya, she has worked with some greats already in her career, including Gentleman and Queen Ifrica. It's a real treat to welcome her on for the first time, and I hope this is the first time of many. It's the incredible Treesha who's also on the podcast. Treesha, hello.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm all good. It's all good here in very hot, very sunny London, actually, I have to say, today. So it is a pleasure, though, to have you both on. I am really excited because both your tracks are fantastic. So I want to get into them.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I want to get into them now because it is fantastic. So Culture Rock Records have released the Change Like Weather riddim. I mean, it's absolutely, I think it's brilliant.
Yes.
It's good, isn't it? It's absolutely
Fresh.
Yes.
That is spot on. It basically it is fresh. It fits right into what's going on musically at the minute, especially especially over here in the UK, because that sort of it's dancehall, but it's got a real Afrobeat kind of carnival.
Exactly, yeah, like an Afro pop.
Yeah, exactly what it is.
Up to the time. Yeah.
It is bang on the money, Treesha, absolutely. And it fits right into what's going on musically at the minute. I mean, it's a fantastic rhythm. I was immediately drawn to it. And other people who put their interpretations to it include Mr. Diamond and Denham Smith. But for me, and I don't want to sort of pick my favourites, but I have to say both of your interpretations really, really stood out for me across this stunning rhythm. But partly because they're both extremely conscious in their own ways, but also just your performances. I mean, basically, I always love what you do. I think you're absolutely fantastic and extremely unique. And Treesha, again, because your vocal on it is stunning, and lyrically as well with fire on it is absolutely brilliant. I mean,
thank you so much.
My pleasure. Basically, let's start with you. I mean, what was your motivation behind your interpretation over the rhythm, which was In My Brain? What was your? I mean, I'll tell listeners what it's about. It's obviously about the herb. Smoking the weed, but it's a lot deeper than that actually. What was your motivation for doing something about cannabis over that rhythm?
Well, I mean, I judge a rhythm based on how many ideas it gives to me. If it gives me multiple ideas, it means that it's a good rhythm. And then the challenge for me is to choose what I think is the best of my ideas. So I had a few ideas with the rhythm. The producer had specifically told me he wanted the bass voice, that recognizable bass voice. So I had a challenge where, I don't like to put myself in any sonical box when I'm creating, but I understand that that's part of the brand identity. So similarly with the rhythm, I felt like, this rhythm can hit the streets, but what do I want to sing about that is relatable both to the streets but also to a conscious person? And in the middle of smoking a joint, I was like, that's it right there,
Love it.
So basically, the song is just my thoughts at the moment. It's it starts out talking about the lighter. It's a typical thing in a dancehall. Everybody's a smoker, but most times you end up go home with 5 lighters in your pocket because it's a thing that we do when we borrow a lighter and we never return it to the owner. So I start out just like I have my lighter, king bass, high like I'm in space, and it's just basically a typical marijuana song giving homage to that plant of wisdom. And then as I go down, I start to play around with the lyrical style to talk about Epicon, which is Jamaica's first distillery. That weed has been legalized. So I give them a shout out. I talk about smoking in Milan with my colleagues over there. So it's just really a typical song. And then in the second verse, I kind of more talk about being a bit of a rebel. So I'm smoking in front of the courthouse, and if politicians fight about it, they're gonna get voted out. But it's just a typical street song from a weed man point of view, and I keep it fresh and young, and the rhythm is already fresh, so I think the song came up pretty nice,
I think it's banging. I love it. I think it's great, and it's such an important topic at the minute.
It too.
Yeah, it's great, and it has real resonance in the UK at the minute because we're in such this battle over cannabis and the legalisation at the minute because they've made it legal for medicinal purposes in certain forms, and then not everybody who's ill and needs it is getting access to it. It's a real hot topic in this country at the minute. So I think that not least is it going to resonate well in the UK, but obviously around the world as well. It's fantastic. I love it to bits. And Treesha, equally, I love yours to bits as well. So your interpretation was money don't mean a thing. It's brilliant, and brilliant lyrically as well. It's great. It's absolutely ingenious piece of work. Again, so what was the motivation for you to, essentially, as a political journalist with one hat on, which I have, I want to say it's an anti-capitalist song, really, isn't it? It's kind of
Yes. I actually have to second Bay-C, and what he said resonates a lot with me. When I listen to an instrumental, the first thing I listen to is the sounds, And I heard the African in it, of course, and then the melodies, and then the lyrics just came to me automatically, without me even wanting to say, all the money in the world. It just came automatically, And then at the same time, I was thinking, because it was something that I was going through, besides the topic of money itself, which is the obvious thing. It's not only about money, it's also about the fact that we need to live our lives happily, We need to be careful about the choices that we make in our lives, like how we invest our time. People say time is money, right? So you don't want to waste your time in putting it into things that are not going to benefit you in the long run. So it's not even only about the money, but it's also about how we do what we're doing, what we're choosing to do with ourselves, who we're putting our time into, who we're trying to impress, why we're trying to impress them, And in the long run, you may impress someone with your money, for example, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient enough, We need to think about in the long term, what is it doing to us, So it was supposed to be actually simple. I know people may take it a bit serious, but I said it in a fun way so people don't think that I'm taking it too serious. But it's true. It is, unfortunately, is true, Money cannot buy you. It can buy you life, it can buy you happiness, but for a very, very short time, At least that's my interpretation.
No, you're spot on, absolutely, and it comes across very strongly from the track. I think I like the fact you say that it didn't want to be too serious, and you walk that tightrope very well actually in the track because the rhythm itself obviously lends itself to be a kind of upbeat song, and if you don't want to read and if you don't want to read too much into your lyrics, you don't have to because it's stunning just to, as we say in the UK, we call it brucking out over here.
broken out.
yeah. It's great to brag out to. But then if you want to listen a little deeper, I think you make some really, really pertinent points about the sort of the world and the culture that is forced upon us in this century. So I think it works on all those levels. I think, as I say, both your interpretations are fantastic. Love them to bits.
Thank you.
Moving on, I just want to ask you, because it kind of, I find it somewhat perplexing, I suppose, really. I mean, riddims themselves, where a producer, well, it's in their current form, it's a case of a producer or record label produces this instrumental and then gets artists to come on and put their own interpretation on it. I suppose if you go back sort of through the decades and decades of reggae, it started off, I believe, as when bands played instrumentals for artists to sing over or sing J over or rap over, etc., 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 and has moved into being more of a producer record label sort of hook now, really. They've always been at the heart of sort of reggae and roots and dancehall, but the revival movement, and since it's come about, it's turned roots into something very eclectic, really. I mean, if you look at especially what the likes of, say, Protégé and his family are doing, it's extremely eclectic musically, and Bay-C yourself as well, actually, with Holy Temple, really eclectic mix of styles. I remember my girlfriend said at the time, when you move into the last section of that record, she branded it Saharan Soul, because you move into, do you remember? You move into this kind of...
Of course. My wife speaks about it all the time from your interview.
No!
Yeah, she's like, we should coin that. That's Saharan Soul. She's a Saharan inspiration, so yeah.
My girlfriend's going to be made up when I tell her that. But like I say, I mean, your record as well was extremely eclectic, and that's where the revival movement has gone. I mean, in those terms, with the movement breaking out into so many different genres and experimental styles as well, do you think rhythms are still as important as they were, Treesha? Do you think they still have the place that they once had in the reggae and the dancehall sort of scene?
Yes, I mean, to answer your message about it being changing, I think that people are just trying to find different ways of delivering messages, because it's been done a long time, way before. So I think the reason why it's that changing is because people just want to interpret it the way they feel, the way they feel they can deliver it best, because you cannot imitate people from the past. You can't do that, but you can keep the torch moving. You can pass it on and people interpret it the way they feel at that moment. So I guess that's why it's, and anyway, the music is changing, the messages are still the same, but the music is changing, but it still resonates with the times. I feel like that's why it is like that. But I feel like the rhythms can still continue to touch people just like the way they did back in the day.
No, I think that's fairly spot on, actually, and yeah, it's a brilliant assessment of the situation, actually, because you're right. I chat to so many artists from the revival movement who say that we're kind of mixing up these styles, some of it based on our own taste, but also because we want to try and get the message out to as many people as possible.
Exactly.
And by diversifying, I mean, I had a brilliant artist called Black Hero on. He's great, isn't he? He's absolutely amazing, and I had him on.
He is amazing, yeah.
Talking about the Immortal Stepper. I mean, it's this. I said in my review of it, I kind of compared it to what Prince was doing back in the day with Purple Rain. That in terms of that, it was so experimental. I was just listening to it, and my mind was blown away. Mm-hmm. But as you rightly point out, Treesha, the message was still got across, and the sort of eclecticism of the music really made me listen. I mean, basically, what are your thoughts on rhythms? I mean, especially with your dancehall background, where rhythms are again extremely important. I mean, do we have this relevance for them still, or do you think the eclecticism is just going to now take over the whole revival movement? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think from my observation, everything is a cycle. So I think that no, and for us in Jamaica, we tend to follow a lot. So if juggling or rhythm is the art of the day, then you'll have a slew of rhythms, and then if it changes to single driven format or the single driven model, then you find that that's what the masses start to do. So I think there's a space for both of them, but the pendulum will swing which one is more prevalent. I think another factor to consider from my side, from my looking on as a producer as well, wearing a producer hat, financially it's more viable to do a single than a juggling, because if you have, for Culture Rock, I'm sure he really has to market 5 songs, even though it's one project, but he has to, design an artwork for Treesha, design an artwork for me, design an artwork for, promo and boost and everything. So your pricing is more exponential in a juggling rhythm scenario than a single. So this is why also a single approach is more, it looks more attractive now, because, you could take all that money and put in one song and market the hell out of that one song, as opposed to spread it across multiple tracks. So I think that also plays into why we're seeing more singles now. I think also the fact that kids are producing, it's easier for kids to become producers now, like with a laptop and just a little microphone. So they're making a whole lot more music. And so if they're making a lot more music, there's not that pressure for them to put multiple artists on one track. They probably make like 10 beats a day. So, the amount of beats that they're making, then they'll probably be more willing to just put one artist on that and then another one for another one. So I think those factors are why you're seeing it a little more single driven. And of course, the cultural revival guys are more about, focusing on album or focusing on getting a body of work that represent that model that Bob Marley and the first round of reggae acts set. So they are not so much interested in the juggling. On the dancehall side now, again, you find that, the Popcorns and the Vardas and the Vibes Cartels, even if Cartel is on a rhythm with 5 other songs, it's almost like it's a single, because people just play that one song. So it makes the producer kind of feel like, let me just focus on the Cartel if I have a Cartel. Or if I have a young artist I'm bringing out, I'll just put Cartel and my young artist so that my young artist can ride on the wave of that. But you don't find this 10, 20 track rhythm kind of thing like in the past. I do believe, however, though, there's a love for that, especially from the selector standpoint of, just playing 5 hot songs on one track. So I do believe it's going to come back, but right now it's swinging towards the single driven,
Again, fascinating analysis. I love it, hearing it from a producer point of view as well. And you're right. I mean, the industry and the way people make music has changed so much. I interviewed a CEO of a UK-based record label about a month ago now, who's been around since sort of the 90s when he was involved in the UK garage scene many years ago. And he was like, well, back in the day, you had to know a producer, and you had to know an editor, and you had to know someone who had a studio, and you had to pay all this money. Now you can literally sit with your laptop and produce music. Right. And it's completely changed the nature of the industry, and in some ways it's made sort of getting music heard even more competitive and more demanding, I suppose. Definitely. Now. Because everyone can put music out. I mean, the good thing to come out of that is, of course, and that leads me into sort of the next area I want to talk about, is that we are seeing and have availability to more music from around the world. Now, the Change Like Weather rhythm is heavily sort of Afrobeat influenced, with sort of dancehall sensibilities. Yeah. And as we were saying at the top of the show, fits in perfectly to what's on trend at the minute within the music scene, especially over here in the UK. I mean, sort of the Afrobeat sound and the music that comes from that great continent is really blowing up at the minute, and artists like Chronic, Skabaka Pyramid, Stoneboy are putting African culture and spirituality and the music at the fore of what they're doing. It's very, very, very prominent at the minute. I mean, Treesha, as I said, you were born in Kenya originally. Yeah. I mean, do you think now we are finally seeing the time when Africa and everything about the sort of motherland is going to get the recognition it deserves finally? Do you think it's now happening?
Most definitely it is. And really, really, really happy and excited to see it's just starting, So I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of it. And first, I'm happy that, it's binding different worlds together, or bonding rather different worlds together. for example, like the Afrobeat and the dancehall. So Jamaicans and Africans are coming together and embracing that, and that's bringing worlds together. And also Americans, I see, are also getting into the trend. People from UK as well. So it's making this movement, and awareness at the same time. But I know, okay, speaking as a Kenyan, I know that the industry there is still growing. Let's just say it's still growing. So this is giving motivation to the artists in Kenya to embrace themselves, to embrace the culture, embrace their own music, come up with their own, because most of the beats that you actually hear that are Afrobeat are mainly from Nigeria, and there's a certain style, there's a certain each and every corner of Africa has a different style beat to it. So most of it comes from Nigeria. So definitely big up to Nigeria and Ghana as well for bringing that out. But I'm really happy. I'm excited for what is about to come out of it, and I'm grateful too for everyone who's pushing the movement.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Bay-C, sort of your Holy Temple project, as I said at the time, the big focus on sort of African and Middle Eastern, North African specifically, sort of music and culture as well. I mean, how important is it for you that sort of the African roots of everything and the culture and spirituality now begins to get recognised for the sort of almost bedrock, I suppose, isn't it really, of so many different musical styles? How important do you think it is that we start giving it the recognition it deserves?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I make a distinction between the music and the culture or the African identity, because I find that the sound or the music is something that is going very global. It's basically seeping into pop and seeping into mainstream. However, some of those songs, probably a certain percentage of it could be just like, if you didn't know it was an African, you just think it's like a person from Canada or a person from UK or something like that. And then there's some of them that they really put their language, the local dialect from Nigeria into it and Ghana. Yeah. So you know that this is the motherland. So I think it's great for both sides, for both the art, the sound becoming more palatable and known globally, as well as exposure to the culture. And I think it's long overdue, because I know that, I have friends in London who, are second generation Ghanaians or Nigerians. But for a long time, people thought they were Jamaicans, because, anytime any dancehall come on, they were so proud of dancehall as, they love it so much. But now they have their own music and their own identity that they can be proud of. And it's going to get even bigger, because just by the volume of the motherland and the diaspora, this is the size of the diaspora and the influence. I think Afrobeat is here to stay. It started from Fela Kuti much decades before, but now it's evolved to a whole different thing. And it's amazing. It's interesting times. And because there's a mashup of the world in terms of music and social media and everybody accessing everything now, I think it's the best time for this kind of exposure to, ethnic music and ethnicity. So yeah, I love it. And the funniest thing is someone would hear culture rock rhythm, change like weather rhythm in Jamaica, and not know that it has any Afrobeats feel to it. The music has become so universal and so boundless, like no boundaries are there now, that it's a little bit of everything. You find even Latin American artists doing Afrobeats. You find that Caribbean people, Trinidad mixing soca with Afrobeats. So the Afrobeat is going to become just almost like how big reggae is for the last 40 years. I think Afrobeats will be one of those staple genres to spew off other genres.
That's a really fascinating point, actually, you made about how you could listen to sort of the change like weather rhythm, and some people may not even recognise Afrobeat in it. I suppose I'd take it for granted, but it's becoming so much part of the mainstream now that many people might not even recognise what it is. It's a really, really interesting point, actually. I hadn't.
I mean, the thing is, you musical, so you know it, but average, 12-year-old, they don't know the musical format and distinction between dancehall and Afrobeat. They more identify the beat by the content, by the artist, or where the artist is from. So for them, if they hear 10 dancehall artists on this beat, they're going to think it's a dancehall beat, even though the music could really be an Afro beat and you put in that dancehall artist on it. You know, so this is why I'm saying the music is very global now.
No, to add on to that, I like what Bay-C said about, that different artists just, jumping on, Afro beats. And, coming from that, for example, Yami, Alade, and Rick Ross, they've just met, because of Afro beats. And you can imagine what else is going to come out of it. You never know. Maybe I'm just, for example, that Elton John with some African artists could come out of that.
Right.
You never know. So it's beautiful that it's coming to this point where artists from all over the world can come together just because of this movement. So
yeah, man, it's beautiful.
I just want, yeah.
You two are great. You are perfect interviewees. I love it. You're just fascinating to listen to you both. Great stuff. Really, really important points there. And I think it will be fascinating to watch how the Afrobeat and everything surrounding that does progress. Go and grab yourself whatever kind of refreshment gets into your brain, because me, Bay-C, and Treesha will be back in a few seconds with more chat. I want to focus on each of you individually now, if I can be so bold, please. Bay-C, yep. Let's start off with you now. You have, because I keep an eye on what you do, obviously, now friend of the podcast. You've been non-stop since I interviewed you last. Literally, every time I flick through your Insta, and I'm like, does this guy ever take a break? I mean, is it possible for you to summarise what you've been doing since we last spoke back at the start of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple. It's global domination through through strategic approach. For me, really and truly, I'm a creator at heart, and I literally make music every day. So for me, my challenge is more output and streamlining my output. Since we did the Holy Temple album, I knew when I did that album that the next step was to go dive right back into urban, more bassy vocal stuff, like the Change Like Weather rhythm, to make sure that I find that balance between the spiritual, conscious, eclectic stuff and the more urban, danceable stuff that people know me for. So coming out of a Holy Temple album, that was the main mission for this year, is just like do a lot of songs in different markets. So Culture Rock is a German producer, and I hope that he'll push it in the German market or the European market. Similarly, I have Baila Como Quiera, is a nice Spanish song that I just released that is getting a lot of push in the Latin American market. And then I did a nice collaboration with this Italian band called Inna Cantina. And I saw
that. Yeah.
All right, and they're like a really, really up and coming, popular ska band with a huge young following, college kids following from Rome. And we did some songs together. We did a video, and my idea is that will create more exposure for the Bay-C brand in Italy. And that has been my approach. I have some songs with some Ghanaian acts as well. I just basically trying to plant seeds at different places and just create along the way. And the idea is to create enough buzz before the next album, which should be around that urban sound. You know what I mean? So that's a game plan.
That sounds like an absolutely brilliant plan to me, and it's obviously working extremely well. I mean, I'm interested because we talked a lot about Holy Temple before, and as I said in the introduction, it was for me one of the albums and one of the projects of 2018. An absolutely stunning piece of work, really mind-blowing, especially in your musical ingenuity, and it was just absolutely fantastic. It really sort of took my breath away. I mean, we're kind of, how much are we on? 7 months? 8 months on from its release. I mean, looking back at it now, was it everything that you sort of envisaged it would be? Are you now, with sort of time having passed, did everything happen with it that you wanted it to happen? Are you happy with it now as a project looking back?
Yeah, well, I mean, it has achieved exactly what I aimed for. I did the Holy Temple album. I like to tell people, like, if you're going to have a meal in Jamaica, the first thing you do is you say a prayer. You say a prayer before you eat. And if the government is going to convene at the cabinet, they normally start with a prayer before they start politics. So for me, it was a fundamental to say, okay, now that I'm stepping out with a solo career, let me make my first major release be a spiritual statement, a project that shows the spiritual side of me before I go to the fun stuff, if you want to call it that. And for me, the main metric of success was just the feedback. I just wanted an album that was critically acclaimed for its artistic contribution. It wasn't something that I was looking for, a commercially viable, successful project. I knew that doing it independently without the machinery of a commercial label meant that it would not necessarily get the same exposure that, even a same eclectic album from a Protege or a Chronix would have, just with that machinery behind it. So I didn't expect that. I wouldn't have come out and said it though, because, if it gets it, then it gets it. But my aim was just to have an album that when people look back in the future, they can say, wow, this was a great body of work. And in that sense, I think I achieved that. So it has done exactly what it should do. My main thing also was just to have great visuals to accompany it. And I do believe that I got some amazing videos out of the project. So I'm very happy with what it has done and what it will continue to do in terms of artistically representing me. And so the idea now is to probably be at a year anniversary in November. We will launch a limited edition LP and a limited edition CD set. But for the most part, it has done what it was aimed to do, which is to critically to have amass critical acclaim for the project. That's what I want. And I must say, you are one of those that your feedback and your review on the album is exactly what I was working for. I really appreciate it, and that is what I needed. So if 10 years, 20 years down the line, my children and my grandchildren look at my project and they can say, wow, this is what people are saying about it. Mr. Topple said it was, one of the albums of the most important albums of the year or of the century or whatever. So I don't mean whatever in a rude way. I just mean that kind of feedback is what I was going for, and my media network, who are very honest, and if it was a crappy album, they would tell me straight up. They all gave it that thumbs up for the creative input and for the effort, and that's all I wanted. So I really feel good about the album.
I'm pleased, and thank you. It's kind of you to say that about me, and it was, and you did get that, because it is a fantastic piece of work that will stay. It's going to stand the test of time, because the way the production, the arrangement, the lyricism, and your voice, obviously. I mean, it's a timeless album, which is the mark of a genius project, and it was absolutely fantastic, and I'm pleased that you can reflect on it now, still that even more positively. And you're right. I mean, it literally set out your stall spiritually and consciously. And now, as you say, you can move back into, okay, let's focus on the dancehall. And I'm interested in that, because I mean, you are, for me, one of the standout artists who's made that transition from being a sort of dancehall superstar into suddenly this fantastically conscious and spiritual body of work that you created. I mean, is that something that, as we see the revival movement taking off more, and as we're discussing Afrobeat taking off more, do you think we're going to see more dancehall artists crossing over into more sort of conscious territory, away from the more sort of commercial driven angle that dancehall currently sort of comes at the music industry from?
Yeah, man, I think it's two sides. I think the revivalists, the acts that are in the revival space, are dying to do stuff outside of reggae and the traditional reggae. I think they're youths, so they're not the age of Bob Marley, and what is fresh to them is, nowadays hip hop and all the trap and all that. So there is a desire for them to step outside of the traditional sound. And I think the other thing is, from the audience will take what you give them, So if you take the content and repackage it and put it in this sonic flavor, they will take it. And I think the success story for that is Coffee right now, where she has taken a topic like blessings and gratitude, which normally delivered on a reggae 70 BPM slow burning spirit kind of vibe, but she can take a topic like that and make it cool on a danceable rhythm like the rhythm that it's on. So you find that kids who wouldn't necessarily navigate towards the traditional reggae sound, because I think that's their parents' music and that's boring, they can relate to Coffee because she's literally rapping. She's when you listen to Rapture and these other songs, she's more like a lyricist more than even a singer. So she's relatable to them from that, but her content is still one that is conscious enough to move the traditionalists, if you will. So I think she's a very good example of mixing the worlds, and I think as more conscious artists come out subsequent to her, you're going to see that more. And I think respect must be given to like Chronix and Kabaka, who have tried to Chronix is a man where him doing dancehall when him ready, but it's just that the reggae stuff is what is so renowned for him. And Kabaka is one who really is a rapper, but him kind of try to put it into a palatable reggae style, and especially because it's coming from Gang and the Marlis background. But in general, I think they have already tried to veer a little left. I think Proto too as well, but Proto is more a hip-hop kind of flavor. But again, he's veering outside of the typical roots with some of the projects to our eclectic place. And I think as youths come out more, you're going to find that balance between the dancehall and the conscious content and mixing it up with even Afrobeats and rap and all this other stuff.
No, I think you're spot on, and I think, as you sort of alluded to, that you're doing yourself, dropping some commercial tracks which are going to be radio friendly, then gives an artist the ability to then move into more conscious territory as well. Because once you got the audience hooked, if you give them something, you don't want to. It's like giving them a meal, isn't it? You give them something nice that they're used to and comfortable with as a starter, and then maybe experiment a bit more on the main course, and then whack with something really out there with the dessert. But
that's exactly it.
It's a random analogy, but I think it's quite appropriate. And I think you're right. We will see more of that. And Coffee is a brilliant example. But speaking of other brilliant female singers, Treesha, this is your first time on the podcast, as we previously discussed.
Yeah.
And it is lovely to have you here. I'm a great admirer of
I'm happy to be here as well.
Thank you. I'm a great admirer of what you do. But obviously, as you are new, everyone knows about Bay-C already who listens to this podcast, because obviously they will have heard him before. But Treesha, you are new. So, I mean, you started singing at a very young age. You were the last born of 4 children in your family. Is that right?
Yes.
And immediately you started showing a sort of talent for singing. How has this progressed over your life to bring you to the point you're at now? What's your musical journey to 2019 been for you?
It started off actually when I moved to Germany, I guess 10 or 11 years ago. I'd say 11 years ago. And I would sing at restaurants and weddings and gala shows. But this was part-time because at the same time I was studying because I'm a doctor's assistant. So then after that, yes. So then after that is when I noticed that, because I always wanted to sing, I've always been singing, even if it's just for fun or like I said, at gala shows and stuff. And that's when a friend of mine introduced me to a gentleman, because they were looking for a new backing singer. So this is actually where the real musical world began. And I sang with him for 2 years before I left my job, because it was too much. I couldn't handle both of them. And at the same time, it was something new and something fresh and something I always wanted to do. If I was back in Kenya, I don't think I would have done it, just because of the way, especially because of my mom, the way parents view things. No, you have to study law, you have to study medicine, and you can't do music. That's not a job, that's just a hobby. And I was like, no, Mom, I'm going to make it. Please, just support me, And then from then on is when I started to record. It was 2014, I think, when I started to record my first album, Listen. And I'd say half shows with Gentleman, that's where my live performance experience came in. And then from then on, with my album, I started getting shows, started meeting new artists like Scaramucci, for example, who and I'm not sure if you're aware of Scaramucci. Are you aware of
No.
Okay. But I'm sure Bay-C is.
Yeah,
He's a Jamaican. Yeah. He's a Jamaican artist living in Germany, France, both. I think he's in France right now, and he's the one who actually recognized my talent as my how do I say it? My forefront voice. And because a gentleman shows would be allowed to sing a song or two, so he asked me if I was planning on releasing an album, and I was like, yeah, I am actually. Then he's like, who's releasing it? And I was like, that's not yet planned. And he's like, if you don't have anyone to do it, I'm be glad to do it for you. So then, yeah, that was history. So of course he released the album, and this is. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
I was going to say it's a great story. I love stories like that. Carry on.
And then, from then on is when I met artists. I also met Bay-C through a friend, a mutual friend, and this is when we got to do Good Girl Swing. Thank you.
I was going
so
to
much,
say
Bay-C.
yes. That was a banger. I love that.
Thank you.
I mean, not to cut you, Treesha, but for me,
Yeah.
it's why it's such a good vibe to have this interview, and I always keep a close link with Treesha, because that was, although I've had hits with TOK, when you step out as a solo artist, that was my first chart topper as a solo artist, and that was Treesha's song. It wasn't really my song; it was Treesha's song, and the producer called me to do a verse on it, and it ended up being the version that went out, and it did very well and continues to do very well across the social.
Yes, till today.
It's giving my number one, you know what I mean? So I'm going to have to big up Treesha every time.
Yeah. No, Bay-C, it was our song, not my song. It's our song. He really put a fire verse on that, man. He blew that whole song up. I'm so grateful. And another thing which I must say, Bay-C is so humble. I'm so humble because I know him from when I was a young girl in Kenya, and I'm like, I have to meet Bay-C. And then I actually met him once in Ehrenfeld, but I don't think he remembers. Club Ban of Ehrenfeld. You had a show in 2014, and I was so nervous. And anyway.
Bay-C, do you remember?
No, this is news to me.
Yeah, but I'm so grateful. He big up, man, Bay-C. Big up, Bay-C.
Respect, man.
Completely. Do you know what? I forgot about Rude Girl Swing. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and loved it. It was absolutely brilliant, and you work so well together. Because I mean, Treesha, that's what draws me to your voice is that you have this wonderful alto tone almost in you, and yet you still have the ability to hit that top range, and then you break into this sing jay as well. I mean, you're really vocally extremely diverse, and with this wonderful rich timbre with your voice. And when you're working with Bay-C with his deep booming voice, the track was absolutely fantastic. It was great.
Thank you.
Brilliant track. You work together extremely well. So I think Topple Uncaged exclusive. He will try and get Bay-C and Treesha to work together on another track again.
Yes, for sure. Yes, we're doing that for sure. 3, 4, 5, 6 track.
Yeah, man. We're gonna work on like music together, and then probably can do a package together. Like a tour package.
Exactly. Yes. That should happen for sure.
Excellent. Very, very good.
It's funny that you mentioned the fact that that I could do different styles, but this also comes thanks to my brothers and sisters, because when I wanted to listen to music, they would all have these different styles in the house. My sister would listen to Janet Jackson, Whitney Houston. My other sister would listen to Bone Thugs and Harmony, and all the West Coast rappers. And then my brother would listen to Morgan Heritage, Bob Marley, a lot of reggae music. So, and I would just have to sit there and listen and wait my turn. And by that time, it's nighttime. So I'm like, okay, you know what, tomorrow. So I guess that's where it also comes from. And this is my musical journey. I guess that's why you hear the different styles that I try to incorporate in my music.
It's very now you've said that, it's very noticeable actually that you did have such an eclectic background. I mean, what motivates you firstly, musically? Is it the message? Is it these different mixes of styles and what you're feeling at the time? What's your main motivation behind doing what you do? I suppose is the question I'm asking really.
Well, my motivation is simple. It's just, seeing people happy, making people happy, It puts a smile on my face when I see people sing along to my songs, or just put a video on Instagram, with them dancing to, Rude Girl Swing, for example. And because at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about the people. I'm writing the music for the people. So if they can resonate to my message, then it makes that's so much motivation. And even just getting the feedback, I like this song, I like, even from you, for example, just your feedback about the track, it's because I didn't expect much out of it, I was just saying what I felt at that moment, and so I'm happy, I'm grateful.
You are two of the most humble guests I've ever had. I mean, didn't expect much from it. It's brilliant, Treesha. Like I said, I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's interesting that you did have such an eclectic background. Quickly, is there one style that you do sort of warm towards? I mean, are you more influenced by sort of reggae, or is it Afrobeat, or is it soul, or is it come on? You must have sort of one overriding love of all the different musical genres, do you?
I wouldn't say. It's hard to say no. It depends on what I feel on the day, I may feel Afrobeat, I may feel R&B, I may feel reggae music again, and then change the next day. But I mean, music is music as long as it makes you feel good, Like Bob Marley says, as long as it hits you and you don't feel no pain, then it's.
I'm glad you answered like that. I was putting you on the spot because, I'm exactly the same. I can swing. I can swing from listening to Bone Thugs, as you pointed out, one of your brothers and sisters used to listen to. I'm a huge Mariah Carey fan. I like listening to Edith Piaf. Right up until obviously reggae and dancehall now. So I think people who have that sort of eclecticism are quite often the best artists actually, because it means you get such a broad range of ideas and thoughts and influences, and it always shows in the music from people like you. So you can hear and feel your eclecticism, and what you can also feel from you is how well you fit into what I consider to be a growing movement of female artists. I've had, as we said off air, and I'll say on air as well, I've had this discussion with a lot of female artists who've been on recently, from Zia Benjamin to Tara Howson to Leela Ike, about how there is this growing movement of female artists which are sort of around the revival scene, but they're kind of lumped into it when really they're a whole movement of artists in their own right. I mean, there's the likes of Ray Nicole, there's the likes of Queen Ifrica, who you worked with recently. Aza Lineage is another one who's absolutely fantastic, and they get clumped in with the revival movement, whereas they're a movement of their own, because what they're doing is they're kind of breaking down all these norms that have existed in the music industry, where, okay, for example, you would always have the Queen of Soul was Aretha Franklin, and the Queen of Pop was Mariah Carey, and the Queen of R&B was Whitney Houston. There was always females fighting, or were perceived to have to fight to be the queen of their genre, or the queen of, or the top of their game, or what have you. And also the kind of the patriarchy that exists and still exists, and the misogyny that exists within the music industry, which however much female artists were sold as being sort of free from that, essentially for many years it was still very heavily controlled by men, but that is now changing, and you can feel it, and you can hear it, and I hear it when I speak to female artists, and I see it and listen to it in their music, and something really exciting is actually happening now. I mean, do you firstly recognise that, and secondly, do you think it's because the timing is just divine? It's now the right time for this to be happening. I mean, what are your thoughts on this sort of crop of female artists that are doing it in their own right as a collective almost now?
Yes, I think everyone is feeling it and noticing it as well. But I also feel like probably the reason why is because, I mean, the only way we can all go to the top is together. You know, there's no reason, there's no need of fighting each other, because at the end of the day, there's something in it for everyone. We're all different. We may be the same, but everyone has a little different style of their own, you know. And I feel like it's important for us to embrace, as females, to embrace each other, because I feel like it's important for us females to embrace each other, because we have a responsibility at the end of the day, you know. And I feel like it's not a secret that that the reggae industry is male dominated. So, you know, where there's male, there's female, and we have that responsibility to balance out industry. We have a responsibility to it, not only for us, you know, it's for the next generations and the next to come. And I feel like this is very, very important. But at the end of the day, it's not like we're trying to overthrow the king, you know. We're trying to just play our roles and make sure that, you know, we balance the situation, we balance the music. Because there's both, there's yin, there's yang, there's sun, there's the moon, there's dark, there's light. It's a balance, and we need it. And I feel like we're all, even the universe, we have to put all this energy, the energy that we're actually putting out into the universe reflects. So I feel like we have that responsibility to send out the right energies into it's Mother Earth, you know. We don't want to piss her off, you know. So we definitely need to be putting out the right energies. And this doesn't come with hatred. This comes with uniting. And I feel like everyone's feeling that. So it's like enough is enough. Come, you know, ladies, let's do this, you know. And I guess that's why the movement is there. But at the same time, no disrespect to the males. We just want to play our role. That's all we want to do.
I think it's a brilliant, you summed that up really well, actually, about the balance. I think that's what's happening, and the scales have been weighted off kilter for quite a while, as it were. And as you say, it's a case of now rebalancing, and no disrespects to the men, Bay-C, but those scales, mate, they need balancing up a bit, and that's exactly what's happening. Brilliant way of summing it up. I could chat to you both for absolutely hours, to be honest. However, I'm not sure if we did a 5-hour interview. I think some people might have to have a break halfway through. So I am going to wrap this up a bit. Bay-C, so non-stop. We're going back to dancehall. I know you've been sort of touring here, there, and everywhere, and dropping tracks left, right, and centre. What is in store for the rest of the year for you? We're now sort of early July, as it were. What are you up to for the rest of the year, my friend?
Well, for the summer, it's a very packed summer. There's a project that I'm about to finish called Yahudans Awoke. Again, this is on the spiritual side. This is a project, a 7-track album featuring many different acts. I'm co-producer on it. I also have a song on it. But the message of it is about us as descendants of slaves to embrace our Hebrewic lineage, and to understand that we in the Caribbean, in the Americas, are descendants of Israelites from the Bible time, coming down through the Nile and line is straight into where we are now. So it's really it's a spiritual album to acknowledge the Hebrew lineage. It's really my father's inspiration. He's start produce now, and he asked me to help him with this project, and it came out really nice. We'll have Lou Kiddy, we'll have myself, we'll have Aisha, Chase, couple acts on it. Well, we do a few songs which are reinterpretations of Say a Little Prayer by Aretha Franklin and Yeah Is My Keeper by Peter Tosh, along with some original stuff. So it's really, really a cool album, and I'll be launching it virtually. Well, we'll do the first appearance next week in Detroit at a conference, and then in August I'll be carrying it over to Ghana and Liberia for soft launch over there. So that's a project for the summer. And then from there on, it's just like promoting this in my brain, promoting some more dancehall stuff, going straight into the Christmas and a few tours around that in Latin America and America.
Excellent. That sounds like an amazing project. Will you come back on the podcast to talk about it and bring on one of the acts with you?
For sure, definitely.
Excellent. I really like saying that. It sounds fascinating. Love it, love it, love it. Treesha, what's in store for you for the rest of the year? I mean, because you dropped your debut album was 2014, is that correct?
Yeah, no, 2015.
2015, my apologies.
And then re-released in 2016, exactly a year after.
So for the rest of the year, are we going to have some new music from you? Are you touring at the minute? What's going on with you?
Yes, I'm actually still touring with Gentleman, but at the same time, I'm recording my new album. I have actually done most of it, but it's never finished. You know how it is as a producer. Basically, you know that too. It's never finished. There's always something to change, and so that's actually it. Get a few videos done. And a few collabs done. Hint, hint, Bay-C, where you there?
Ready. You know me already, man. Just send the track.
Yes. And yes, that's about it. And I'll be going home actually to Kenya this year. Do some networking, interviews, and all that.
Do you think the album? When can we expect the album? Are we talking this year, or is it going to be 2020? Do you think?
I actually wanted it to be this year, but I'm thinking more March next year. So for now, we'll just be dropping some, jugglings and what do you call it? A few singles, most probably.
Excellent. I look forward to them as well. And again, as with Bay-C, please come back on this podcast when your album drops. I would love to have you back on to talk about that. Whew, wow, I really enjoyed that. That was a real treat having the two of you together and being able to listen to your thoughts on all these things, all off the back of one rhythm, I have to say. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you. Real pleasure to have you on. For the time being, I'm so humbled to have Bay-C and Treesha on the podcast. Guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you as well. Thank you so much.
Wow, how great were Bay-C and Treesha? It's fascinating hearing how two artists working with the same instrumental track put their own stamp on things and give completely different interpretations of very similar music. Absolutely brilliant. I love chatting to them. They have such a great rapport after working together. It was really, really enjoyable to do. So here are their two tracks with a bit of a Topple mashup. It is Bay-C with In My Brain and Treesha with Money Don't Mean a Thing, both over the Culture Rock Records Change Like Weather rhythm. Here's Bay-C and Treesha.
I grade a kick in a me brain. I like me the on the plane. And the kush that a kick in a me brain. Archie have the best strain. Yo. Them a ask where me get it from. One draw for me split make you high like a pelican. If I yard then a epican. And if me fly out me have to get the gram. Anywhere me land, ask Vito when me dem me land. If the herbs will we smoke and a limited edition. Big spliff in a me hand, very long. Make me high like the wheel of ferry sun. High grade a kick in a me brain. High like me dem on the plane. And the kush that a kick in a me brain. Archie have the best strain. Yo.
Yeah, yo. Twindy, cousin. Culture Rock, Treesha. Enough of them a spend way too much money for things that they really don't need, no. Treesha tell them say, all the money in the world don't mean nothing. All those diamonds and pearls won't mean nothing. Don't mean a thing. Money may buy you wife, money may buy you life. Money may buy you a car, you drive down the road in a hype. Happiness you can't find it, living the illusion the system design, yeah. So you check yourself, you better stop, or you go ahead and make a big belly. All the money in the world So they spend a fortune on the high life. Money them a waste. Not for the things them a buy no half taste. Just to impress. Some of them life.
And that's it. This very special episode of Topple Uncaged is done. I'd like to thank my fantastic guests, the incredible Bay-C and the sublime Treesha. You can find all the details to their social media in the show notes. As always, behind the scenes, thank you to the love of my life, the gorgeous Nicola Jeffrey. Follow her on Twitter, it's at Nicola C. Jeffrey. My man behind the booth, sound engineer Gav Pause. Follow him on Twitter, it's at Pause with a Z Radio. And my in-house singer, it's Ray Star Music. Follow her on Twitter, it's at Ray_Star113. Thank you to the Canary for uncaging me. I will see you again soon.
Uncaged.